Sir Alex Ferguson sacked Manchester United player after blazing Liverpool dressing room row in nearly 30 years of Premier League football. No matter how much time passes, there are some games that the streets will never forget. Liverpool 4-3 Newcastle United, Manchester United 4-3 Man City, Newcastle 4-4 Arsenal, Man City 3-2 Queen's Park Rangers. Fans don't need to be reminded of the years for memories of such fixtures to come flooding back. For Reds and Red Devils fans, a 3-3 draw at Anfield from the formative years of the Premier League falls into the same category. United were the reigning champions, having won the inaugural Premiership title in 1992-93 when they stormed into a 3-0 lead at Anfield back in January 1994, building such an advantage inside just 24 minutes, thanks to goals from Steve Bruce, Giggs and Denis Irwin. This look is set to be the latest embarrassing episode for Graeme Souness, man, with Scot going on to lose his job later that month. However, an Eagle clutch prize and late Neil Ruddock header would earn Liverpool a famous comeback draw to ensure their boss held onto his job for a few weeks longer. But while the under pressure Souness would avoid the sack after this particular match, it was a rather different story for one Manchester United legend after he incurred the wrath of Sir Alex Ferguson in the Anfield dressing room. Peter Schmeichel was in goal for the Red Devils that night, and while he wasn't at fault for any of the goals, his manager was displeased with his performance after the final whistle. As Ferguson launched into a lively dressing room in Quest, the Danish took issue with the accusation. The Scot fired his way, tearing back into his manager and some of his teammates as a result. The exchange was enough to leave Schmeichel ordering his agent to find him a new club and his manager to tell him he would have to sack him after calling him into his office the next day, only for another dressing room exchange to prompt a U-turn. After our 3-3 draw at Anfield in January 1994, held up as one of the greatest Premier League games, I had a rush of blood to the head, leading to some behavior that sames me to this day. The former goalkeeper wrote in his autobiography, published earlier this year. For the first 25 minutes at least, we tore Liverpool apart. We were 3-0 up, and it should have been 5-0 or 6-0, but we eased it off, and I have no idea why. Eagle Cloud scored twice before halftime and 11 minutes from the end. Neil Ruddock equalized with a header from the position we were in earlier in the match. It was embarrassing. For the one and only time in my 8 years with United, Fergie had a lengthy dressing room in quiz. He was so upset about throwing it away against them that he launched into us, quickly focusing his anger on me. He attacked the quality of my goal kicks of all things, complaining that they kept landing on the heads of Liverpool defender. It was unfair. Of course, older and wiser, I realized he was letting off steam and I was a convenient target, but I was furious about the game too and came right back at him. There are both regrets and no regrets about what I said. What I regret is that I not only questioned him, but as a manager and a man, but I began pointing out others in the dressing room, saying that had not done their jobs to call out teammates, friends in front of the group, to say to the manager that they played badly. That was not on. He continued, not regretted is that I stood up to the manager. This might surprise you, but Virgie permitted that. Yet this was the day for it. just not the time and place, and how I did it was certainly not in the right way. The disappointment is I was too naive to see all this. I should have just taken my flag and moved it on. When I think of that day, it feels almost like having a cream on my record, like something you did which you have to live with. Driving home from that game, I was simply pumped with anger and adrenaline and could not see beyond the injustice I had felt when Virgie picked it on me. I felt so disillusioned I even called Rooney, my agent, to ask him to find me a new club. The next morning, I felt calmer but still unsettled. I needed to see Virgie, but he was not at training. The day after he was, and he called me into his office. He told me he was going to have to sack me. I apologized for my behavior and he accepted it, but stood his ground. It doesn't alter the fact you will have to leave, he said. It was then that I did the only thing in the whole affair I can take a teeny bit of pride from. Before we went out for training, I stood up in front of everyone and said how sorry I was. Unknown to me, Virgie was listening from behind the door, and he never followed through on his threat. Schmeichel elaborated on his private meeting with Ferguson when he was threatened with the sack when appearing on Jamie Carragher's The Greatest Game podcast. He called me in for sting and said, "You know I have to sack you. I can't tolerate my players speaking to me like that. It goes against my authority," he said. I was still filming at the time, so I said, "Fine. So let me go. I was just being stupid." He also revealed more about his apology to his teammates, with his own agent later telling Schmeichel that he had that to thank for saving his Manchester United career. People were about to go out on to the pitch, and I said, "I want to apologize to all of you for my behavior on Saturday," he told Carragher. "That's unheard of. I've apologized to the manager as well, and I don't think a player should ever behave that way. If I insulted anyone, I really do apologize for that as well." And this is something that my agent told me. He told my agent that he was outside the dressing room and he heard that, and he changed his mind because I apologized. I don't think he was ever going to sack me. He never said it to the players. He only ever said it to me. He was right and I was wrong right from the beginning of this.